Last Tuesday night changed everything. I was coming back from the kitchen with a fresh beer when I heard my wife's voice coming from the living room. She was on the phone with her sister, and what I heard next made my blood run cold. I'm telling you, he has absolutely no idea how to satisfy a woman. It's like he learned everything from some outdated manual. I froze in the hallway. My wife was talking about me, about our intimate life. To her sister. I mean, he tries, but it's so mechanical. No passion, no instinct. Sometimes I just lie there and think about grocery lists until he's done. Her sister's laughter echoed through the phone speaker. That's terrible. Have you tried talking to him about it? What's the point? You can't teach someone to have natural rhythm. Besides, he's so sensitive about everything. The moment I give him any feedback, he gets all defensive and moody. I stood there listening to my own wife tear me apart to someone else. Every word felt like a punch to the gut. But what really got to me wasn't just the criticism. It was how casual she sounded about it, like discussing the weather. Honestly, sometimes I wonder what I was thinking when I married him. My friends keep asking why I look so tired all the time, and I can't exactly tell them it's because my husband thinks foreplay is asking if I'm ready. More laughter from her sister. Oh no, he doesn't. He does. And then he acts like he's some kind of generous lover because he actually asks. The bar is so low it's underground. I had heard enough. I walked back to the kitchen and set my beer down on the counter with more force than necessary. My hands were shaking, not from anger, but from something much worse. Humiliation. For 6 years of marriage, I thought we had a good relationship. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never imagined she viewed our most intimate moments with such contempt. I thought about all the times I tried to please her, all the effort I put into making sure she was comfortable and satisfied. Apparently, I was just fooling myself. I heard her say goodbye to her sister and hang up. A few minutes later, she walked into the kitchen with that same smile she always wore around me. "Hey babe, what are you doing in here?" she asked, reaching for a glass of water. "Just getting a drink," I replied, studying her face. She looked completely normal. No guilt, no discomfort. Like she hadn't just spent 20 minutes destroying my confidence to someone else. "Everything okay? You look a little pale." I almost laughed at the irony. "I'm fine. Good. I was just talking to my sister." She says hi. I'm sure she does. If she caught the sarcasm in my voice, she didn't show it. She just kissed my cheek and walked back to the living room to continue watching her show. I stood there in the kitchen for another 10 minutes, replaying every word I'd heard. The worst part wasn't even the criticism itself. It was the realization that while I'd been treating our marriage like a partnership, she'd been treating it like a performance review. And apparently, I was failing. That night, as she fell asleep next to me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how long this had been going on. How many people had she complained to about me? How many conversations had I missed where she painted me as some incompetent husband who couldn't even satisfy his own wife? For the first time in our marriage, I started questioning everything. Was I really as terrible as she made me sound? Or was there something else going on here? I thought about the way she responded to my efforts, the way she always seemed distracted or impatient. I'd always blamed myself, thinking I needed to try harder or be better. But now I wondered if the problem wasn't my technique. Maybe the problem was that she'd already decided I wasn't worth her genuine attention. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Made coffee, kissed me goodbye, told me to have a good day at work. Same routine as always. But something fundamental had shifted in me overnight. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was calculating. If my wife thought I was such a disappointment, then maybe it was time I found out what other people thought of me. Maybe it was time I stopped trying so hard to please someone who clearly couldn't be pleased. As I drove to work that morning, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to confront her about what I'd heard. Not yet. First, I was going to do some investigating of my own. I needed to know exactly how deep this disrespect went before I decided what to do about it. Because if there's one thing I've learned about myself over the years, it's that I don't stay where I'm not wanted. And based on what I'd heard last night, it was becoming very clear that my own wife might not want me as much as I thought she did. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own marriage. Not the obsessive, paranoid kind, but the methodical type who pays attention to details he'd previously ignored. It started with her phone habits. She'd always been protective of her device, but now I noticed the pattern. Every time she stepped away to take a call from work or text her mom, she'd disappear for 20 or 30 minutes. And when she came back, She'd have that same satisfied look someone gets after venting to a friend. I didn't snoop through her messages. I didn't need to. Her behavior told me everything. Last Friday, we went to her coworker's birthday party. I was talking to a group of guys by the bar when I noticed her across the room with 3 other women, all huddled together like they were sharing state secrets. Their body language screamed gossip session. One of them glanced over at me and shook her head with this pitying expression. Another one patted my wife's shoulder like she was consoling her about something tragic. When my wife looked in my direction and saw me watching, she quickly changed the subject and the group dispersed. But the damage was done. I now knew her complaints about me weren't limited to family calls. Having fun, I asked when she rejoined me later. "Oh yes, just catching up with the girls. You know how it is." "I'm starting to." She missed the edge in my voice completely. Or maybe she just didn't care enough to notice. The real revelation came the following Tuesday. I was picking up lunch from that sandwich place downtown when I ran into her friend from college. We'd met a few times at parties, and she'd always been friendly enough. "Hey there, how are things going?" she asked with an overly sympathetic tone that immediately put me on alert. "Things are great. Why wouldn't they be?" She looked uncomfortable. "Oh, well, you know how she worries about everything. Marriage is hard work, right?" "What exactly did she tell you?" "Nothing specific. Just that you two have been going through some adjustments. But that's totally normal. Every couple has their challenges." The way she avoided eye contact told me everything. My wife had been running her mouth to anyone who would listen. College friends, co-workers, probably the checkout girl at Target for all I knew. That evening, I decided to test something. Instead of my usual routine of cooking dinner and asking about her day, I just ordered pizza and focused on my own things. I didn't initiate conversation, didn't ask if she needed anything, didn't even sit next to her on the couch. She didn't notice for the first hour. When she finally did, her reaction was telling. "You're being weird tonight. Are you sick or something?" "Just tired." "Well, you could still make an effort. I've had a long day too." There it was. The expectation that I should always be the one making an effort. The assumption that her day somehow mattered more than mine. I'd been so conditioned to this dynamic that I'd never questioned it before. "Maybe you should call your sister about it," I said casually, not looking up from my laptop. She paused. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just thought she might have some advice. She seems to have opinions about everything else." If she caught the implication, she didn't acknowledge it. She just shrugged and went back to her show. But I caught something else. Relief. Like she was actually glad I wasn't paying attention to her. Which made me wonder if all her complaints to other people were just a way to justify her own lack of interest in our marriage. Over the weekend, I started an experiment. I began treating our relationship exactly the way she did. Minimal effort, maximum self-focus. I stopped asking about her plans and started making my own. I stopped trying to include her in conversations and started having more interesting ones with other people. The change was immediate and eye-opening. Sunday afternoon, I was washing my car in the driveway when our neighbor came over to chat. She's a divorced woman in her 40s who's always been friendly but professional. Nothing inappropriate, just neighborly. "Your car always looks spotless," she said, genuinely impressed. "My ex never took care of anything. I had to nag him just to take out the trash. I enjoy taking care of things that matter to me," I replied. We talked for about 15 minutes about cars, weekend plans, normal stuff. But I noticed something. She listened when I spoke. She laughed at my jokes. She asked follow-up questions about things I mentioned. Basic human courtesy that I'd forgotten existed. When I went back inside, my wife barely looked up from her phone. "Who were you talking to out there?" she asked absently. "The neighbor." That's nice." That was it. No curiosity about what we discussed, no interest in my afternoon activities. Nothing. That night, as I was brushing my teeth, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. When had I started looking so defeated? When had I accepted that this was the best I could expect from the person who was supposed to be my biggest supporter? I thought about all the times over the past 6 years when I'd bent over backwards to make her happy. The surprises, the thoughtful gestures, the constant effort to be the husband I thought she wanted. And for what? So she could tell everyone who would listen that I was inadequate? The more I reflected on our relationship, the more I realized I'd been playing a rigged game. She got to be the victim of my supposed shortcomings while I got to be the villain who never tried hard enough. Meanwhile, she never had to examine her own contributions to our problems. But here's what really got to me. In all my years of marriage, I'd never once complained about her to another person. Not to my friends, not to my family, not to coworkers. I'd always handled our issues privately, with respect for the relationship. She clearly didn't operate by the same code. As I lay in bed that night, listening to her breathe beside me, I realized something important. I wasn't angry about her complaints. I was angry about her dishonesty. If she had problems with me, she should have come to me first. Instead, she'd chosen to humiliate me behind my back while pretending everything was fine to my face. That kind of disrespect doesn't get better with time. It gets worse. So I decided to stop playing defense and start playing offense. If she wanted to tell people I was unsatisfying, then I was going to find out what satisfaction actually looked like. And I was going to start by satisfying myself. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but it started with a simple decision. I was done trying to fix something that wasn't broken to begin with. Monday morning, instead of making coffee for both of us like I had every day for 6 years, I made 1 cup. For me, when she stumbled into the kitchen 20 minutes later looking confused, I was already halfway through reading the sports section. "Where's my coffee?" she asked, still half asleep. "Coffee maker's right there. Same place it's been for 6 years." She stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. "But you always make the coffee. And you always have something to complain about. Seems like we're both breaking patterns." I didn't say it harshly, just matter of fact. But her expression told me she wasn't used to me being anything but accommodating. That evening, I signed up for a gym membership. Not the cheap chain place down the street, but the nice facility across town that I'd driven past 1,000 times thinking it was too expensive or too much trouble. Turns out, investing in yourself isn't trouble at all. It's freedom. Within a week, I had a routine that had nothing to do with her schedule or her needs. I'd hit the gym after work, grab dinner somewhere on the way home, and show up around 8 feeling energized instead of drained. "You're never home anymore," she complained after the 3rd night. "I'm home now. You know what I mean. We used to spend evenings together. We used to do a lot of things. People change. The gym became more than just exercise. It became proof that I was capable of commitment and discipline. Every week, I could see progress in the mirror. Not just physically, but in the way I carried myself. Other people noticed too. 2 weeks into my new routine, I was leaving the grocery store when someone called my name. It was my old college roommate's sister. We'd met at a few parties over the years, but never really talked. "I almost didn't recognize you," she said, genuinely surprised. "You look fantastic. What have you been doing?" "Just taking better care of myself." "Well, whatever it is, keep it up. You look like a completely different person." The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes, but it was 5 minutes of someone actually seeing me. Not the version of me that my wife had constructed in her complaints, but the real me. The guy who was intelligent, funny, and apparently worth noticing. At work, things started shifting too. I'd always been competent at my job, but I played it safe. Never volunteered for the high-visibility projects. Never pushed for the promotions I knew I deserved. I'd been too focused on being home for dinner, on being the reliable husband who never caused waves. That changed when I realized my wife wasn't even paying attention to my reliability anyway. I started staying late to work on a project I actually cared about. I volunteered to present at the monthly meeting. I struck up conversations with colleagues I'd barely spoken to before. One of them was a woman from the marketing department. Professional, sharp, with this energy that made every conversation feel important. We'd exchanged maybe 20 words in 3 years of working in the same building. "I really liked your presentation today," she said after the meeting. "You brought up some points I hadn't considered." "Thanks. I've been thinking about that project for a while. It shows. You should speak up more often. You have good instincts." Good instincts. When was the last time my wife had said anything like that to me? We ended up talking for another 10 minutes about work, about ideas, about goals. Normal professional conversation, but it felt revolutionary. Here was someone who valued my thoughts, who asked questions because she was genuinely interested in the answers. "We should grab coffee sometime and brainstorm some more ideas," she suggested. "I'd like that." When I got home that night, my wife was in the exact same spot on the couch where I'd left her that morning, scrolling through her phone. "How was work?" she asked without looking up. "Productive. Gave a presentation that went really well." "That's nice. That's nice." 3 years of marriage counseling couldn't have illustrated our problem more clearly than those 2 words. She wasn't interested in my success, my goals, or my growth. She just wanted me to exist in the background of her life without requiring any real attention or investment from her. The coffee meeting happened the following Tuesday. What was supposed to be a 30-minute brainstorming session turned into an hour and a half of the kind of conversation I'd forgotten was possible. She listened to everything I said, built on my ideas, challenged me in ways that made me think harder and perform better. "Your wife is really lucky," she said as we were wrapping up. "She gets to have these conversations with you every day." I almost laughed. "Not exactly." "What do you mean?" "Let's just say not everyone appreciates the same things you do." She looked confused, like the concept of not appreciating good conversation was foreign to her, which made me realize how foreign it had become to me too. That weekend, instead of my usual routine of household projects and couple activities that my wife would tolerate but not enjoy, I made other plans. I went hiking, alone. For the first time in years, I spent an entire day doing exactly what I wanted to do without considering anyone else's preferences. The silence was incredible. Not the awkward silence of a marriage where two people have nothing to say to each other, but the peaceful silence of a person who's comfortable in his own company. When I got home that evening, refreshed and energized, my wife barely acknowledged my existence. "Where were you all day?" she asked during a commercial break. "Hiking up at the state park." "By yourself?" "Yes." "That's weird. Why didn't you ask me to come?" "Because you hate hiking." "I don't hate hiking. You've complained about it every single time I've suggested it for the past 6 years." She went quiet for a moment. "Well, you could have still asked." This was classic her, complaining about not being included in something she wouldn't have enjoyed anyway, creating problems where none existed, then making them my fault for not reading her mind. 6 months ago, I would have apologized and promised to ask next time. Now I just shrugged. "Next time I'll know you're interested." The shift in my attitude was becoming impossible to ignore. I wasn't the same guy who used to hang on her every word and bend over backwards to make her happy. I was someone with his own interests, his own goals, and his own standards. And for the first time in our marriage, I was actually happy. Not the conditional happiness that depended on her mood or approval, but genuine contentment that came from living authentically. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd spent months telling people I didn't know how to satisfy a woman. But in trying to satisfy her, I'd forgotten how to satisfy myself. Now that I'd figured that part out, everything else was starting to make sense. 3 months into my new routine, the changes were impossible to hide. I dropped 20 pounds, upgraded my wardrobe, and developed the kind of confidence that comes from actually liking yourself. The difference was most obvious at social events. We went to her company's annual barbecue on a Saturday afternoon. In the past, I would have stuck close to her side, making small talk with whoever she wanted to talk to, being the supportive husband in the background. This time, I worked the room like I belonged there. I ended up in a conversation with 3 guys from her department about weekend projects and outdoor gear. Normal guy talk, but the kind I'd forgotten I was good at. We were laughing about some ridiculous camping disaster when I noticed her watching us from across the patio. She had this strange look on her face. Not angry exactly, more like she was seeing something she didn't recognize. "Your husband's pretty funny," one of the guys said to her when she joined our group. "He was just telling us about that fishing trip disaster." "Oh yes, he's very entertaining," she said, but her tone was flat. Like she wasn't quite sure how to respond to people actually enjoying my company. Later, while I was getting drinks from the cooler, her coworker's wife approached me. "I hope you don't mind me saying, but you seem really different from the last time we met." "More? I don't know, present? Confident. Thanks. I've been focusing on some personal goals lately." "Well, whatever you're doing is working. You look great." These interactions kept happening, not just at the barbecue, but everywhere. The woman at the coffee shop who started remembering my order and always smiled when I walked in. The guy at the gym who asked if I wanted to join his weekend basketball group. The neighbor who mentioned how nice my lawn looked and asked what my secret was. People were noticing me, actually seeing me. And the more they did, the more I realized how invisible I'd become in my own marriage. The basketball group turned into a regular thing. Saturday mornings, 8 guys, good competition, and the kind of trash talk that makes you remember why male friendship matters. After the games, we'd grab breakfast and solve the world's problems over coffee and eggs. "You should bring your wife sometime," one of them suggested. "My girlfriend loves watching us play. Says it's better than cable. She's not really into sports." "What is she into?" I paused, realizing I couldn't answer that question anymore. What was she into besides complaining and scrolling through her phone? "Good question," I said finally. The guys laughed, thinking I was being sarcastic. but I was dead serious. At work, the coffee meetings with my marketing colleague became a weekly thing. Professional networking, she called it, but our conversations had evolved beyond just work topics. We talked about books, travel plans, life goals, the kind of substantial discussions that make you think and grow. "I've been meaning to ask," she said during one of our meetings. "Are you and your wife doing anything fun for your anniversary next month?" I'd completely forgotten our anniversary was coming up. "We haven't made plans yet." "Well, if you need restaurant recommendations, I know some great places." My ex never wanted to go anywhere special, so I ended up discovering all the good spots on my own. She mentioned her ex-husband occasionally, but never with bitterness, just as context for why she valued certain things. Good conversation, mutual respect, shared interests. All the things that seem to be missing from my current situation. "What happened with your marriage, if you don't mind me asking?" "We just grew in different directions. He wanted someone who would be happy with the basics. I wanted someone who would grow with me. Eventually, we realized we were making each other miserable, trying to be people we weren't." That conversation stayed with me for days. The idea that two people could simply want different things, and that wasn't necessarily anyone's fault. But it also wasn't anyone's responsibility to settle for less than what they needed. The wake-up call came the following weekend. We were having dinner with her sister and brother-in-law, our first double date in months. I was actually looking forward to it. I'd been feeling more social lately, more comfortable in conversations. I thought it might be a chance to reconnect with my wife in a different setting. Instead, it became a showcase of how far apart we'd grown. While I was talking with her brother-in-law about a hiking trail he'd recommended, I heard her sister ask my wife a question that made my blood freeze. "So what's got him so happy lately? He seems like a completely different person." My wife's response was telling. "I honestly have no idea. He's been acting weird for months. Going to the gym all the time, staying late at work, barely talks to me anymore. Maybe he's having a midlife crisis," her sister suggested with a laugh. "Maybe. Or maybe he's finally growing up. Either way, it's about time." Her tone was dismissive, like my transformation was something that inconvenienced her rather than something she might be curious about or proud of. But her sister's next comment hit differently. "Well, whatever it is, it's working for him. He looks fantastic. And he actually seems interested in conversation now. Remember how quiet he used to be at family stuff? He was never quiet. He just didn't have much to say. No, I think he had plenty to say. He just wasn't confident enough to say it. Look at him now." I pretended not to hear, but I caught every word. Her sister could see changes that my own wife either couldn't recognize or didn't care about. The drive home was awkward. "Your sister seemed to enjoy dinner," I said, testing the waters. "She always likes you. Thinks you're funnier than you actually are. Good thing someone does." She shot me a look. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just making conversation." But we both knew it meant everything. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, I caught her staring at me in the bathroom mirror. "What?" I asked. "Nothing. You look different lately." "Different how?" "I don't know. Healthier, I guess. More confident." It was the first time in months she'd really looked at me. Actually seen me instead of just glancing in my direction. Is that a bad thing? No, it's not bad. It's just different. Different. That seemed to be everyone's favorite word for describing me lately. But while other people said it like it was a positive change, she said it like it was something she wasn't sure she liked. Which told me everything I needed to know about where we stood. I was becoming the man I'd always had the potential to be. Confident, engaging, worth noticing. The question was whether my wife wanted that man, or if she preferred the version who'd been content to live in her shadow. Based on her reaction so far, I was pretty sure I knew the answer. The pressure started building when her sister wouldn't let it go. "Seriously, what's your secret?" she asked me directly at their mother's birthday dinner 2 weeks later. "You're like a completely different person. Happier, more confident. What changed?" Before I could answer, my wife jumped in. "He's been going to the gym and thinks he's some kind of fitness guru now." "It's not just the gym," her sister pressed. "You seem more, I don't know, more alive. Like you actually enjoy your life now." "I do enjoy my life." "Well, that's obvious. The question is why now? What was different before?" My wife's face tightened. She clearly didn't like where this conversation was heading. "People change," I said simply. "Sometimes you just realize you've been settling for less than you deserve." The silence that followed was deafening. Later that week, my wife tried a different approach. She started making efforts she hadn't made in years. Cooking my favorite meals, suggesting we watch movies together, even initiating conversations about my work. But it felt forced, desperate even. We should plan a weekend getaway, she suggested over breakfast. Just the two of us. Remember how we used to do that? When was the last time we did that? She paused, clearly trying to remember. It's been a while, but that doesn't mean we can't start again. Why now? What do you mean, why now? Can't I want to spend time with my husband? You can. I'm just curious about the timing. She got defensive. I don't need a reason to want to reconnect with you. But we both knew she did have a reason. The problem was that her sudden interest felt like damage control, not genuine affection. The breaking point came when her sister cornered me at the grocery store. Can I ask you something? She said, appearing beside me in the cereal aisle. Sure. Are you happy in your marriage? The directness of the question caught me off guard. That's a pretty personal question. I know, but I'm worried about my sister. She seems, I don't know, anxious lately. Like she's afraid of something. Afraid of what? Losing you, maybe? She keeps asking me if I think you're acting strange, if I notice anything different. She's obsessing over it. Interesting. So my wife was worried enough to pump her sister for information, but not worried enough to actually talk to me directly. What do you think? I asked. Honestly, I think you figured out you're worth more than you were getting. And now she's panicking because she realizes what she might lose. Her sister was smarter than I'd given her credit for. The thing is, she continued, she's been complaining about you for years. To me, to our mom, to her friends. Always something wrong. Always something you weren't doing right. I know. You know? I've known for a while. And you're okay with that? I'm handling it. She studied my face carefully. Good. Because honestly, the way you are now, this confident, happy version, this is who you were meant to be. Don't let anyone convince you to go backwards. That evening, my wife was waiting when I got home from the gym. We need to talk, she said. About what? About us. About whatever's been going on with you lately. What's been going on with me? Don't play dumb. You know exactly what I mean. The gym, the attitude, the way you barely talk to me anymore. I talk to you, not like you used to. You used to care about my day, about what I was thinking, about making me happy. And now you act like you don't need me at all. There it was. The real issue. Not that I was unhappy, but that I wasn't dependent on her anymore. Maybe I don't need you the way I used to. Her face went pale. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago. I'm not going to apologize for that. But what about us? What about our marriage? What about it? Don't you want to work on it? I looked at her for a long moment. The woman who'd spent months telling people I couldn't satisfy her. The woman who was now panicking because I'd stopped trying to prove her wrong. That depends, I said finally. Do you actually want to work on it? Or do you just want me to go back to being the guy who accepted whatever scraps of attention you felt like giving me? She didn't answer, because we both knew what the real answer was. The conversation we'd been avoiding finally happened on a Thursday night. She'd been watching me get ready for my basketball game when she finally cracked. I know you heard me talking to my sister that night. I stopped tying my shoes and looked at her. Which conversation would that be? Don't make me say it. Actually, I think you should say it. Out loud. To me this time, instead of to everyone else. Her face crumpled. I was just venting. I didn't mean those things. Yes, you did. And you meant them when you said them to your coworkers too. And to your college friend. And probably to half the people we know. She sat down hard on the bed. How long have you known? Long enough to realize that while I was trying to be the husband you wanted, you were busy telling people I was the husband you settled for. That's not fair. No. What's not fair is spending 6 years of marriage thinking we were partners when you saw me as a disappointment you had to endure. The silence stretched between us. I want to fix this, she said finally. Fix what exactly? The fact that you don't respect me, or the fact that I finally figured that out? I do respect you. No, you don't. Respect doesn't come with a laugh track when you're describing your husband's shortcomings to your sister. She started crying, but it felt manipulative rather than genuine. Please, we can go to counseling. We can work on this. Here's the thing, I said, standing up. I've already worked on this. I worked on myself. I figured out what I needed to be happy, and I did it. The question is whether you can be happy with the man I actually am, instead of the man you've been trying to turn me into. Of course I can. Prove it. How? Stop trying to manage my transformation and start appreciating it. Stop seeing my confidence as a threat and start seeing it as an asset. Stop treating my happiness like it's something that takes away from yours. She wiped her eyes. I can do that. I don't think you can. Because the truth is, you were comfortable when I was insecure. When I needed your approval, when I was constantly trying to prove myself to you. That dynamic worked for you. That's not true. Then why are you more upset about me being happy than you ever were about me being miserable? She couldn't answer that. I met someone, I said quietly. Her head snapped up. What? Someone who appreciates good conversation. Someone who values intelligence and humor and ambition. Someone who thinks I'm worth listening to. Are you having an affair? No. I'm having the kind of connection you convinced me I wasn't capable of having. Turns out, I'm perfectly capable of satisfying someone. Just not someone who's already decided I'm not worth the effort. Who is she? It doesn't matter who she is. What matters is that she sees something in me that you've never seen, or that you stopped seeing a long time ago. My wife stood up, anger replacing the tears. So that's it. You're just going to throw away our marriage for some woman at work. I'm not throwing away our marriage for another woman. I'm ending our marriage for me. The other woman is just proof that I deserve better than what I've been accepting. This is insane. You can't just give up on us. I'm not giving up. I'm choosing up. There's a difference. I grabbed my gym bag and headed for the door. Where are you going? To play basketball with people who actually enjoy my company. Then I'm going to have drinks with a woman who thinks I'm interesting enough to spend time with. And tomorrow, I'm going to wake up in a life where I'm valued instead of tolerated. And us? What about us? I turned back to her one last time. There is no us. There's you, complaining to anyone who'll listen about how disappointing I am. And there's me, finally understanding that the problem was never my performance. The problem was your audience. I walked out that night and didn't look back. 6 months later, I signed the divorce papers with no regrets. My wife tried to paint me as the villain who abandoned our marriage for another woman, but her sister knew better. Her coworkers knew better. Even her friends knew better. Because by then, everyone could see what I'd finally realized. I hadn't found someone new. I'd found myself. And once you know what you're worth, you stop accepting anything less. The woman from marketing became much more than a colleague. Not because I was looking for a replacement, but because she recognized the man I'd always been underneath the insecurity and self-doubt. You know what I love most about you? She told me one evening as we watched the sunset from her deck. What's that? You know exactly who you are, and you're not apologizing for it. She was right. I'd finally satisfied myself by finding someone who actually appreciated my efforts. And that satisfaction was worth more than all the years I'd spent trying to convince someone else that I was enough. I was more than enough. I always had been.